this is Timur Sol, and in today's tricks we will talk about using Arkenforge in a slightly different manner than we do usually. Now, usually I use Arkenforge for making battle maps. What I'm going to do today is show you how you can use Arkenforge to make your overland maps that you have ready more interesting, or how you can use it to give your players something new to chew on. Now, I readied myself a generic map earlier. It weighs around 5 megabytes, so it will take a few seconds to load onto the map. I will also link the generator that I used for making this map during the video, so you can use it also. It creates quite awesome actually maps that you can use for your games if you have such needs. So let's say you have something like this. This is now a normal object. It was set down on my map as an object. Now, I want it, first and foremost, I want it to be on the terrain layer. I want it to be underneath the grid. Additionally, I will go into my map settings, my grid settings, and I will change the square to hex. I usually use hex. This is something that is normal for me. If you use something else, obviously it doesn't have to be hex, but hex seems to be a relatively normal or regular way for people to use overland maps. Now, you can obviously change the scale of the map over here. If I would like to be very careful, I could change this size of the map so that it has a strict and well, precise scale. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't think that's necessary right now. I will, however, make the map a slightly bigger. I think I moved it a little bit by accident, so yeah. Two ways in which you can scale things are simple. Well, you can obviously just stretch it by the corner and it will stretch in that way. What is also interesting, if you hold your shift key, you see the pivot over here, and stretch, it will stretch outwards from that pivot point. It's also a nice way to make things work. Now I feel that this is okay. I don't have landmarks over here. I don't have places that would be super interesting, but we will use, I think, this one as an example for ourselves. So what you can do is you can create actually political maps or maps of influence, and I did myself for one of the games that I have exactly in Arkenforge. So you can take one of the colors that you have here. Let's take Oh Dear. And we will go down with the opacity. Let's say we'll go to 20, and we'll just go around Kritska, if that's how this place over here is pronounced, just like that. Now, if you're thinking, God, if I will be making this for each and every single place on the map, I will go crazy. I will show you a slight trick in a second. Okay, let's say that we have 4 levels of influence on your maps. What I did is I created 4 layers of separate things over here. So take a look at this. You can move it without any issue, and if I hold my control, I can simply move it in accordance with the grid. What this means is that I could just I'll just lock the map underneath. I could take all these assets, copy them, paste them over here, somewhere around here, let's say. And let's say I need a 3-layer influence board right now. I will disable this one, the last one, which is the biggest one. Copy, paste, select, hold my control, and we have a nice overlay around go loco. I can select this, punch my F1, which is adjust hue, which you always have in your color and opacity and image manipulation, and change. No, I deselected it. Punch my F1 and change the hue to, let's say, bluish. I can always change the saturation if I'm not satisfied, and the brightness, and afterwards the opacity if I want it to be a little deeper blue. I just need to do that. What it also does is interesting, because if you have two places that have influences next to each other, you could also make them overlap and have an interesting effect over here. Now, depending on who's more powerful or who has more power over this place, you could take your oh dear or dear layers and push them upwards to the top, and this will slightly change. Did you notice how this color over here changed? There's a slight change. Maybe it would be better visible if I would do it over here. So on this side and on this side, this will be underneath. The change is not visible that much. Maybe if I would change the hue on the blue tiles, but this is more violetish and this is more blueberryish, let's call it. But yeah, back on track. This is how I made one of the maps where I show influences of power and so on. This is also how I made my map for my Foundry game, where I have players hex crawling on the continent. And I find that this is actually a very efficient way to create such maps, probably more efficient than making that by your own or by hand. And it's relatively quick. So I hope you liked this video. If so, you can leave a comment and tell me what else you would like to see or know, and I'll be happy to oblige if that's doable. One more thing I totally forgot to tell you. These maps, if you're using them in person, so if you're using Arkenforge as it was meant to be used, so in-person virtual tabletop machine software, you could obviously additionally use overlays that are animated for this. So instead of these static overlays with some opacity, you can use overlays that have some kind of animations. So for example, if you could you would feel that some part would be blighted. Let's say that which part looks like a blighted terrain. This looks blighted. So you could go into any of your assets basically. Let's go into fantasy, wilderness, tiles, and ancient ground. Ancient ground looks okay. Now it reverts to tile setting, which is okay. We're gonna use that. We're gonna set ourselves the tiles over here. This is our blighted terrain. Now I'm going to go into tiles, texture scale, and I'm gonna do that what I told you we don't usually want to do. So I'm gonna go below 0.5. Yeah, 0.5 looks good. I am going to go up with the saturation, up with the brightness, just a little bit. Now I'm going to go into my tiled scroll. I'm going to put it on. Oop, it's an accident. Oh, brilliant! We got even red specks from the saturation change. Now I am going to go into noise on, change the noise scale. Now you have to be relatively careful here to not overdo it. Let's say that this would be okay. Maybe I could change the opacity a little bit. now I'm gonna bump the saturation again and the brightness level until I see it fit. You could go down and have a foggy terrain, or you could go up and have, as mentioned, blighted terrain or burning or whatever else you need. You can obviously also change the tile scroll settings over here, so it could also additionally give you some interesting effects. And it also stacks with chroma key. So if I go into chroma key and select this color, for example, and now close this, chroma key, change the tolerance, could have effects like these over here that are visible. It all depends up to you. You can have your whole map build around things that are happening in real life. Maybe there's a fire somewhere, maybe there's a blighted terrain, maybe there's some foggy cloud somewhere. Whatever you feel and whatever your imagination tells you, it's doable with these simple steps.